Okay, friends, so we're going to get started with the meatloaf. And first thing I wanted to tell you is this is so simple. We should have the meatloaf all prepared and ready to go into the 400-degree oven. Within about 5 to 6 minutes, it should be all prepped and placed in its dish, baking dish. So it only calls for 9 ingredients. So I'm going to run through those, and then we're going to start forming the loaf, throwing it all in and forming the loaf. So what it calls for is 2 pounds of your ground meat, whatever kind you want. And I've got my grass-fed, grass-finished beef. And then it calls for 1 egg, and I have my pasture-raised organic brown eggs. It just calls for 1. It calls for 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of black pepper. It calls for 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast and 1/4 cup or 3 tablespoons of milled or ground flaxseed. So those are the ingredients. And then after you get them all mixed into the loaf, and the loaf formed, you wrap the meatloaf in bacon strips, place it into your baking dish, and it goes into a 400-degree oven for 25 to 30 minutes. So I am going to start putting things in. So here's my meat. I'm going to move this stuff out of the way. So as not to have a mishap and spill something. Okay. Okay, so I just got to throw this stuff in. So onion powder, garlic powder, black pepper, salt, one egg, and I'm going to wait on adding in my nutritional yeast and ground flaxseed until I get this a little mixed. And you just do this by hand, but you want to mix it well till everything is good and incorporated into the meatloaf. You can use any kind of ground meat that you prefer. Some people don't like beef and they want to use ground turkey or ground chicken or other types of ground meat, and any type of ground meat will work to make your meatloaf. But I like to make my meatloaf with good old ground beef. But it needs to be a good quality pasture-raised, grass-fed, grass-finished beef, in my case, because of my grain intolerances. And with farm-raised beef, most of those cows nowadays have lived on grass the first 6 months of their life or so, but then they finish them off for the last 3 months before they send them to slaughter with feeding them grains. And a lot of times those grains that they feed them are, you know, grains that I've got an intolerance to. Wheat and corn are 2 of my grain intolerances, also oats. And most animals that our farm raised do get fed corn, so that's just something I'm really not supposed to have. Okay, now I've got this to the point where I can add in my nutritional yeast and my flaxseed, ground flaxseed. So now those two items should help hold this loaf together once I get that incorporated throughout. Yeah, I can already tell it's definitely holding it together better now that I've added in the nutritional yeast flakes and the ground flax seed. Smells really good. Now what I don't have yet is this into much of a loaf. I'm getting there, but I'm going to have to bring my bacon over. It's right here. I just have to move some things around. Let me move these. I'll move my eggs out of the way. And I've just laid these strips of bacon out on a cutting mat, and what I want to do is take this formed loaf now out of this dish where I was working with it, and I want to put it on top of this bacon so that I can wrap the bacon around it. Because like I said, this is going to be a ketogenic bacon wrapped meatloaf. So now I'm just taking these 8 bacon strips and wrapping them around this meatloaf. I literally laid my meatloaf right on top of the bacon that I had laid out. And actually, it's only going to take 7 bacon strips instead of 8. So now this bacon wrapped meatloaf, you can see, is going to go directly into my greased loaf pan. Now I want to remove my gloves just a second. Let me get this stuff out of the way. I'll be right back. Okay. And this is it. It's in its baking dish, and it's going to go right into the 400-degree oven for 25 to 30 minutes. I'll see you in the next video to show you how to do our veggies. Thanks.